Hello, so today we will be working on our session 6 risk assessment. And so, just to walk you through what we're going to be doing today, first we're going to be using the driver framework that Professor Zhang talks about in class a lot. So, first, define and discover. That we'll get to the questions when we come to it. Implement. We're going to actually build the portfolio analysis, and then the represent goes with that, and then the validate, evolve, and reflect. So first, let's get to the define and discover stage. So I just took this assignment part, which it'll tell us you just started your first job and want to invest $10,000 of your signing bonus. Your colleagues suggest going all in on Tesla because it's the future, but your parents say to stick with the safe S&P 500. So this gives us all of the hypothetical data in this. So for my define and discover, I first just went and copy and pasted, which we already know all of this because it came straight out of there. Just the $10,000 bonus, it's the future, and the S&P index. So our goal is just to have a high Sharpe ratio. Basically, that just means that your risk and your return don't outweigh each other. You want the return to be worth the risk. And then the risks that concern you the most is just like volatility, which is the risk. But Tesla is known to be kind of an up and down company. So we'll think of that when we're going through it. So we have the standard deviations and returns for them in this hypothetical. So the average return would be 35 and standard deviation 60%, which is just the volatility, which is a good measure of risk. So let's go down to the represent stage. So now that we know what we're trying to look for, we need to find out the return and the volatility for each asset. So first, I went into Gemini and just punched in what we would do in class and asked it to model a base off of it. So that is our portfolio analysis that we did in class. So I asked it to give me a similar code while using other data points. So let's go down to here where we asked it to run the code. So we go to here, and this is just the analyze stage. So first, we need the correlation. So the correlation is just a measurement of if they move together or separate. So a strong positive, which is a number close to 1, but no negative sign in front, that means that they move together with each other. So for instance, Tesla and Apple. If Tesla goes up, Apple is likely to also go up. Now let's look at something like a high negative correlation, which would be the highest one on here is -2. So let's say Tesla goes up, BND is likely to go down. So they're negatively correlated. So basically, when we're looking at correlation, we don't want to load our portfolio with anything too correlated, all one correlation, and we don't want them all negative. So we want a happy medium between those two. So then we have to find the risk and return for each of those, which this is the code. I copy and pasted what I got into here so it's easier to see. So we talked about correlation. Now let's look at the risk versus return. So Tesla gives you a 35% return, which is the highest of them, but the volatility is also the highest. So it's not a sure thing, and you could lose money. Then it just goes down the line. Apple 22, but 28% volatility. Goes all the way down the line. So now we want to look at what would be the best portfolio for us using that information. So we look for the best Sharpe ratio. So in this case, the rankings for them would be the high Sharpe ratio mix, which is just diversification. And you'd be getting a 15.8% return on a 18.91% risk, which if you look at some of these this Tesla stock gives you more return than the Sharpe ratio, but the risk is also 60%. And then same if we go back to the S&P 500, you're getting a lower return, but it is a little safer. However, the Sharpe ratio is lower. So that's just the weighted return average. So now we want to say which one would be the best out of them. So we do the high Sharpe mix, which we got. And just for our key, so we know how much we're throwing in compared to that $10,000, 30% would be $3,000. So for this portfolio, we want Apple to be put $3,000 in there. The S&P 500, $3,000. J&J, $2,000. Tesla, $1,000. BND, $10,000, and ExxonMobil, $0. So that totals out to the $10,000. And now we go to our validate stage. So we want to compare the portfolio metrics with the actual S&P 500. So this is just a quick image real quick of the S&P 500, and it went up 15% this past year, which if we go over to this return, this has a 12% in this hypothetical, which is similar, but we also worked with, where there it's in here. So then for the validate, we also wanted to compare it to real world data. So what I did for my code was I had it use Yahoo Finance, and I imported it in there. And you come down to here and you get the real return based on the hypothetical. So the S&P 500, according to this, is according to the hypotheticals that you gave us, is 12%, and they're 17% in real life, which is close to that 15% over the last year. It's probably just off because the stocks are constantly moving. And so we see that Tesla's return is much higher in real life, which means that the Sharpe ratio would be higher because it has similar volatility to what it already had. So we go down the list and we see that a lot of these hypothetical ones are similar to their real life ones, but there are some that have really outdone themselves, like this ExxonMobil, 8% to 38%. That's a big jump. So, and then just for the insights that it gives us, the market has moved a lot because of stuff like COVID and AI, which some people don't really think about when they're looking at stocks, but that does have a big effect, like we talked about in class. So finally, for the validate, we compared the portfolio metrics with the benchmarks, and for the represent, over here, for the implement, we wanted to build a portfolio with our real data. And then for our evolve stage, how does changing the mix affect the risk and return? Let's say that we did something like let's say we used ExxonMobil for 50% and moved everything down 5%. That would move the risk with ExxonMobil because now we have the most ExxonMobil. So if we look at our data here, ExxonMobil has a 8% return in this has an 8% return in this hypothetical scenario. We're gonna be getting a lower return on it, but the volatility could be higher could be lower because we're getting rid of some Tesla that's 60% and replacing it with some ExxonMobil. So basically, it's just a relationship of getting the right Sharpe ratio. So at the and then for the correlation part of it that I wanted to talk about, right here, one of my points is if you have too many assets with a strong positive correlation, the risk is going to be very high. But on the contrary, if you have a lot with negative, one stock's going to go up, one stock's going to go down, and you're going to end up just pretty much break even, which isn't giving you any money, which you'd be better off just holding on to your money with no risk at all, and you don't have to worry. So, time to reflect on all of this. I thought this was one of my best coding ones because I actually brought Yahoo Finance in to the code, which was really cool. And then just what I'm shocked about is that the S&P 500 wasn't the best option. It may be the safest, but if we're going off Sharpe ratio like we talked about in class, it wasn't the best option. And it's a big wake-up call for like doing your research on it, because if you have the right diversification in your portfolio, you can actually be ahead of the average person. And then finally, just to answer a big question that we talked about in class was, can the historical returns and correlations predict the future? And they can't. But to go along with that, they are a useful tool to analyze the stocks, and you can see kind of trends going up, but it's not for certain. So you don't want to throw all your eggs in one basket just because it did good the past 5 years. It could stay steady, it could go down, it could shoot up again. So overall, you just need to be careful with your money, but I feel way more knowledgeable about stocks and about diversifying because from my personal experience, I've just been trying to buy one stock at a time and not looking at the correlation or anything like that. So overall, I think this was a great experience and will be super helpful for me. So thank you.